Hello everyone and welcome back. This video is the 5 ways to modify your yoga practice so that you can continue practicing in your home studio with your favorite teachers, even if they're not offering prenatal yoga. Yoga is so good for us throughout pregnancy and beyond. So it's a great way to continue your practice as long as you know and are informed about what's best for your body throughout the first, second, and third trimester. So stay tuned and I'll share with you the 5 ways to modify your practice. During the first trimester, we don't need to modify a whole lot. During the first trimester, the baby is very tiny. It's actually, I believe, still an embryo for a while until a certain amount of weeks, and then it becomes a fetus. So in that time, we can pretty much do our practice as we normally would. And so I don't have a whole lot of information about how to change up your practice in the first trimester. You can pretty much practice as much as you would. You might have some fatigue, so you might kind of scale down your practice just so that you can feel less tired, or you can meet the energy that you're working with rather. So for second and third trimesters, we definitely want to modify. So the first thing on my list is no prone poses. Prone poses are poses where we're laying directly down on our bellies, and we just want to avoid that altogether. In the second and third trimester, as your bump gets bigger, it'll become less comfortable to be on your belly anyway, but we just want to avoid any unnecessary pressure on the baby, on the belly. So no prone poses. And that means no locust pose, no shalabhasana, locust shalabhasana, same thing, just Sanskrit. No floor bow and no dhanurasana. So none of those prone poses. Okay, the next thing I want to go over is how to modify your vinyasa. Because we don't want to do prone poses and we also don't want to do a whole lot of extreme back bending, we want to modify our vinyasa in our second and third trimester. So my recommendation for modifying your vinyasa is to have blocks on their low setting. I find that it's very helpful to use blocks throughout the second and third trimester. They've been essential for me in this journey. So my suggestion is to have the blocks on their low setting for vinyasa. And when your belly is a little bit smaller, you might still be able to do your regular vinyasa as you would, just with the blocks, which give us a little more space. So for example, plank pose, chaturanga, roll over the toes, up dog, roll over the toes, down dog. Now, for me, at this point, with so much weight aggregated in the front of my body, that up dog doesn't feel great. So as your belly grows, you might want to modify your vinyasa to be something like this. I like the knees to stay down, but I have them back of my hips so that I still have a little more of a workout. The closer my knees are to my wrist, the less pressure or weight is going to be on my arms as I lower. But this helps me have kind of a good balance between exercising strength and support. So from here, I like to take a yogi push-up on the blocks. Then I do an inhale cow. So it's exhale, yogi push-up. Inhale, cow is my back bend instead of cobra or up dog. And then I tuck the toes under and find downward facing dog. So that's how I like to modify my vinyasas. Number 3 on my list is keep twist open. So we don't want to compress the belly overly. We don't want to extremely compress the belly. So for twists, we will keep them open-ended instead of closed. So an example, the difference between an open twist, I'll take a seated twist. If I turn this way and I hook my elbow over my knee, which I can't do right now, that would be a closed twist. But this variation where I have the foot on the inside of the extended leg and I have my hand behind me and I'm twisting away from the bent knee, this is going to be an open twist. I'm still getting some twists in the upper spine, but I'm still have plenty of room for my belly. So that's one option. Another twisting variation, because we do a lot of twists from standing positions. So for example, we have the posture called easy twist. Usually that means it's like a runner's lunge position, and then you have the hand on the mat and then the arm twisting. So for me at this point in pregnancy, that's not really attainable. I'm gonna step my opposite leg back so you can see. So for me, I'm gonna take my foot nice and wide. My left leg is bent and my foot is nice and wide, and I'm taking my right hand on the opposite end wide on the right. I have my right hand to the block, and then I can twist. Do you see how this is much more open than, say, my feet being closer together and my hand being all the way to the earth? So that's another variation of twisting. Finally, third variation of twisting I want to offer is a lot of times we hook the elbow over the knee in a twist, either chair twist or lunge twist. So if we're in a class and the teacher is offering a twist of that nature, we're just going to keep the hands at heart center and twist slightly towards that bent leg. Instead of making it more extreme, hooking the elbow, it's going to be a simple twisting open. Another option, if you don't want to keep hands at prayer, is to open the twist, open the arms, okay? So those are our twisting variation options. Number 4. So as the belly grows, and you'll hear this a lot throughout your pregnancy, but as you get to a certain point in the second and third trimester, you're no longer going to want to be laying directly on your back. That goes for sleeping. That also goes for yoga postures. And the reason for that is the vena cava, which is the major vein, runs alongside the right side of the body, which is why we're often instructed to lay on our left side. It's going to optimize blood flow to the mother and to the placenta, which means to the baby. So in our practice, we don't want to take postures directly on our back in the second and third trimester. And so that means no shavasana directly on your back. And my main modification for shavasana is to simply lie on your left side. And I often like to take a block underneath the top knee. So left side body on the earth. I might have my left arm underneath me here, my right hand in front. My knees might just stay bent. I could even just rest my arm on my hips here. Alternatively, I could bring the block or bolster to the knee. Another variation for supine shavasana would be to take the blocks to create this ramp situation so that you have a lifted, supported heart opener. I prefer to have a bolster, but if you don't have a bolster, you could just bring the shoulder blades down to the block, the lower block, and then the head to the upper block. And for me at this point, it's most comfortable to keep my knees bent rather than extending them out long. But if you're comfortable with that, you could do that. Arms out to the side. And a bolster is just going to help soften those edges of those blocks so it can feel a little more comfy. But that's another alternative for shavasana. I also wanted to point out a couple other alternative postures that are usually done on our back towards the end or the beginning of practice. And one of those is supine twist. So instead of laying on our back to do a supine twist, we could simply do that seated twist I showed earlier. That would be something you could do. Now, we often take happy baby on our backs. One variation is to take one foot a little bit away from the groin, but bent, and then take your opposite foot in that same hand, bend the knee deeply, and you have a half-seated happy baby. So when they're doing happy baby on their back, you could do this instead, and then halfway through, switch to the other foot, right? The other pose that we often do on our backs is figure 4, which is a variation of pigeon. You could take regular pigeon, right? Right now, I don't feel warm enough to do regular pigeon, but you could take regular pigeon. Or if you prefer, you could take figure 4, but propped up like this. So ankle to the top of the opposite foot, flex that top foot. You might rock the knees back and forth. Hands could come behind you. Fingertips pointing away. And then you can have your figure 4. And the closer your sit bones are to that grounded foot, the deeper the stretch is going to be on that lifted leg. So those are some alternatives for typically supine variation poses. Number 5 on my list is going to be limiting or avoiding back bending. The reason for that is after about 20 weeks of pregnancy, the body starts to produce a hormone called relaxin. This hormone will relax the muscles, the joints, and the bones so that this can facilitate our birth of our baby at the end of pregnancy. And having said that, we just do not want to split the abdomen by overly extending our back bends. So that this splitting of the abdomen is called diastasis recti, and that is a common issue that happens with pregnant people. So we want to keep this protected by limiting our back bending. So what does that mean? I wouldn't go into a full wheel pose, for example. Even as an experienced longtime yogi, I personally have avoided wheel pose all of pregnancy. Bridge pose is okay, especially if you're okay being on your back for a short period of time. Even now in pregnancy, I probably wouldn't do bridge pose, but up until maybe 30 weeks, I could do a bridge. When we're doing back bends, we're gonna wanna focus, like, if you wanna open up the heart, you can still do supported heart openers. For example, we might do a cactus pose, we'll still do cat-cow, but I would not do, for example, a full-on up dog. That doesn't feel too good for me. So you'll have to see as you progress through your pregnancy and continue your practice when things start to feel like they're no longer supportive or good for you and your body. It is definitely an intuition thing, but also just having the knowledge of these are the kind of main postures or types of postures that we want to limit, modify, or avoid is very helpful. So the other option is the one I did earlier in practice as far as heart opening, which was that supported heart opener with the blocks supporting us. So these are ways we can still open the heart and have a little bit of opening across the chest, because we don't want to just continue to roll forward. We still want to open and be bright and have the collarbones be broad. We just don't want to overextend, especially with all this weight bulging forward. Back bending can be pretty intense on the body. So those are my 5 things to watch for. I hope that that's helpful. If you think of other things in your practice that you'd like to know modifications for, please leave a comment below and I'd love to hear from you, and I'll respond with my ideas for modifications for those poses. But I hope that you continue your practice. It's so good for you in pregnancy, and take care. Many blessings. Namaste.